some of the most prescient warnings and those early solutions specifically disbelieved.
We can now test for it in the locations where we know it exists. We can also look for it in other locations so we can predict where it might occur.
We don't have to test the entire state in the Middle West or wherever they may be. We don't have to test the entire state. I think it's ridiculous.
So that means we can put in place educational campaigns about how to prevent infection and spillover.
Oh, let's bludgeon Trump with this new hoax.
Bludgeon with this new hoax. Hannity got that exactly backwards. It's the virus that's real, and the people being bludgeoned are its 100,000 victims in America now. Not the president who defied the science. He's not the victim in the story. Now, we can note Hannity has later toned down his rhetoric. He also claims that he didn't mean it was actually a coronavirus hoax. You can hear him and judge for yourself. Now, these lost lives are the most serious consequence here, but even after grieving them, when we go forward and we try to debate the future and reopening the economy and where do we go from here, it's these same experts who were ignored that offer another lesson. Investing in this science up front, this low cost of prevention, is not only safer, it's also better economics than the high cost of another uncontrolled outbreak, be it this one or the next one.
We know that that amount of money pales in comparison. At a cost of just less than 10% of a single large epidemic response, we could discover the majority of the planet's yet to be known viral threats. So let's just take that all in. It's a lot, but I'm walking through all of it because it's so important to you, to your life, to your family, to your community. What do we have here? Independent experts ignored. Government veterans who sat in the same seats, making the same, sometimes very tough calls, ignored. But then for Trump, it actually gets even worse. Which brings me to the final part of this special report that I want you to see, that I'm sharing with you because it matters so much. These were the calls coming from inside the Trump White House. Trump not only ignoring the doctors and the Obama officials, he went full Cassandra on the experts and aides in his own administration. Now, this is the most damning part of the history for Trump. Some of these lessons have nothing to do with him, as I've mentioned. But on this, he actually had some of the right plans available in his hands, inside his administration, had he only listened. Take Dr. Nancy Messonnier, nonpartisan expert who literally ran the CDC Immunization Center. Whether you've heard of her or not, if you're the president, you're supposed to know who these top people are so you can listen to them and appraise their science. She knows this stuff. This is her thing. Back in February, before this was all front page news, before any governors were talking quarantines, when the presidential primaries were still in full bloom, she did the thing that many people avoid in government. She took a stand, risked her career to deliver the bad news that so many people didn't want to hear, including her bosses. She told reporters on record in public the science was showing this virus was going to arrive. And that meant disrupting life, planning for closed schools, working from home, lost income. She said that may sound overwhelming at a time when no one was really talking like that in public. She said it may sound severe, but she said something you always want to hear from the scientific experts who are basically helping you make life and death decisions in government. She said, let's get on this now. Listen to this closely as we hit 100,000 deaths tonight, because she hit the nail on the head in February in public.
And I told my children that while I didn't think that they were at risk right now, we as a family need to be preparing for significant disruption of our lives. You should think about what you would do for childcare if schools or daycares close. Is teleworking an option for you? Secondary consequences of some of these measures might include missed work and loss of income. This whole situation may seem overwhelming, and that disruption to everyday life may be severe. But these are things that people need to start thinking about now.
Thinking about now. That's it. She called it. Listening and acting on a top CDC expert's warning would have helped immensely. But that's not what the president did. Remember,
The Cassandras of the world are often ignored or even sidelined. And Trump fits right into that playbook. Ignore, threaten to get a different answer, punish if you don't get it. Instead of heeding those warnings of those CDC doctors and experts in his own administration, we now know Trump was angry. He threatened to fire her, shouting that the doctor's call scared people. And he was alarmed of her talk of school closings, which, of course, is one of many things that actually would prove to be necessary. A furious Mr. Trump threatened to oust Dr. Messonnier, reported the Wall Street Journal. And even as Trump tried to disappear the facts and the science there in his face, to punish its source, to cover it all up, it's worth recalling many other people, regardless of their partisan politics, were actually immediately able to do on that day what Trump could not. They could hear a CDC expert presenting the facts. They could see the scientific significance of that. And they could respond to the implications immediately. On Wall Street, where, of course, Republicans trade just like Democrats, the markets heard that doctor. They began pricing in the risk. She explained the Dow crashing over 1,000 points. That was the Dow's largest single one-day drop to date at the time. Some of Trump's own political appointees were also writing out early warnings. China hawk and White House advisor Peter Navarro issued warnings in January saying the lack of immunity could lead to a, quote, full-blown pandemic. Now, he was on the right track. The New York Times reporting Trump was concerned, though, not about the health warning, but that Navarro wrote it down. A president who won't use email, a president who fought the Mueller probe by avoiding any paper evidence, was already thinking about the pandemic paper trail that could hurt him instead of what to do about the facts being presented. Now, again, the Cassandra playbook: ignore, threaten, retaliate if needed. Well, Navarro, he came back in the fold. That's important as we try to understand what's been happening. He avoided that retaliation because he went out and started helping defend Trump on 60 Minutes, eating some of his words and attacking the press, saying, show me the 60 Minutes episode that said, hey, the global pandemic's coming. That's quite a dodge, since you could show the Navarro memo that said it. Now, others inside the administration didn't back down like him. And they say they also faced this retaliation for it. Dr. Bright says he was fired partly for sharing warnings about equipment.
We knew going into this pandemic that critical medical equipment would be in short supply. I pushed those warnings to our critical infrastructure protection team.
Predicting the U.S. would need more medical equipment was right. The doctor says he was ignored and then punished, like our friend, the unheard prophet Cassandra. The myth stressing how stubborn and powerful people would rather treat someone as literally insane than hear their bad news.
Give me your blessing for a happy voyage.
I cannot bless what I see in your future, Paris.
Cassandra! Cassandra, stop this.
But, Father, it's true. Her name is Death.
Cassandra! Forgive my sister. She suffers from an illness.
She will bring the disaster I have prophesied. Her name will be written in letters of fire.
Forgive her? But of course, it isn't the people who didn't listen. They're the ones who need forgiveness. The people who heard the warnings, especially people in power, and rejected them. They need forgiveness. This is a point made by another type of prophet, in my opinion, Lauryn Hill, whose poetry echoes today in this political crusade where we have people who are literally at war with truth, science, and accountability. She famously said, consequence is no coincidence. Hypocrites always want to play innocent, never want to face it when it's time for punishment. Hypocrites don't like consequences. But as another old saying goes, those who fail to learn history, of course, are deemed to repeat it. And I think that applies to ancient mythology as well as this recent pandemic history. Because we're not out of the woods tonight. Not by a long shot. So it is worth asking, should these Cassandras of this pandemic continue to be ignored, sidelined, and punished? Or are these the experts we should listen to now more than ever?
We are playing a game of Russian roulette.
We are one globe. What happens in every other place happens to us.
Right now, we are pretty stupid about what's out there waiting for us.
You should think about what you would do for childcare if schools or daycares close. Is teleworking an option for you?
We could discover the majority of the planet's yet to be known viral threats.
Turn the culture we have of reactivity to a culture of proactivity.
This whole situation may seem overwhelming, and that disruption to everyday life may be severe. But these are things that people need to start thinking about.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.